I've had Max since college. A golden retriever with a lopsided ear and an obsession with tennis balls. He was my one constant when life got messy. He'd seen me through breakups, job changes, even the long silence that followed my parents' death. Max was more than just a pet. He was family. We had a routine, simple and comforting. I'd get home from work at 6. He'd greet me at the door with his tail wagging like a windshield wiper. We'd walk around the block, share a late dinner, and settle into the creaky recliner where he'd curl up at my feet. But last Tuesday that routine cracked. Started with a sound. Just past midnight, I was jolted awake by something strange, something too human. Voice. Not loud. Not angry. Just wrong. I sat up in bed, heart thudding, and strained my ears in the darkness. Silence. Then the soft jingle of Max's collar from the hallway. The sound he made when he got restless at night. I shrugged it off. Maybe I'd been dreaming. The next night it happened again. Only this time I was awake when I heard it. A whisper. Cold. Came from just outside my bedroom door. I froze, covers bunched in my fists, breath caught in my throat. Max. I crept to the door expecting to see someone, anyone on the other side. But it was just Max, sitting in the hallway, eyes glowing faintly from the bathroom nightlight. Cold, he said again. Whoa. Not said. Poke. The word wasn't barked. It wasn't some strange dog noise. It was language, clear, human, with a breathy rasp that did not belong in any throat, especially not my dog's. I slammed the door shut. The rest of the night, I sat against the headboard, blanket pulled around me like armor, eyes fixed on the door. Max didn't speak again, but I could hear him pacing. His claws scraping softly on the hardwood floor like distant clock hands ticking toward something inevitable. By morning he was back to normal. Tail wagging, tongue lolling, chasing a piece of toast I'd dropped on the kitchen floor. No speech. No whispers. Just Max. I convinced myself it was stress. Sleep deprivation. Maybe I was finally cracking from loneliness. But that night, as I climbed into bed, Max didn't follow me in. Instead, he stood at the edge of the hallway, his head cocked unnaturally to one side. And then, in that same low rasp, he whispered, "Why did you lock the door?" I didn't sleep after that. The way Max said it. Why did you lock the door? It wasn't just the words. It was the cadence. The deliberate choice of tone, like something mimicking human speech after listening to it for years. Not quite right. Too slow. Too hollow. The next morning, Max acted like nothing had happened. He dropped his slobbery tennis ball at my feet, tail swishing back and forth like a metronome, eyes bright and innocent. I wanted to believe it was all a dream. Maybe I was sick. Maybe I'd finally gone crazy. But when I bent down to scratch behind his ear, he flinched. Max never flinched. That day at work I couldn't focus. I found myself replaying the night in my head. His voice, the way he stood still and watchful. The kind of stillness that doesn't belong to something alive. My co-workers talked around me like I wasn't even there. Their voices muffled like I was underwater. By the time I got home, dusk had painted the sky a sickly orange. Max wasn't at the door. No excited barking. No tail wagging. Just silence. Called for him. Max! No response. I found him in the living room, sitting upright on the couch, something he was never allowed to do. Staring blankly at the dark TV screen like he was watching something I couldn't see. He didn't move. Not until I stepped closer. Then, slowly, he turned his head too slowly. Like the joints weren't used to bending. His mouth parted. I braced for words. But he didn't speak. He smiled. Or at least he tried to. His lips curled back, exposing his teeth in what could only be described as a grotesque imitation of a grin. Not playful. Not friendly. Just wrong. That night, I tried locking him out of my room again. I couldn't look him in the eyes anymore. Whatever was behind them wasn't Max. Not anymore. The scratching started around 1 a.m. Slow at first like a light tap. Then stronger, more insistent. Then came the whisper. "You're not listening." My chest tightened. I buried myself under the blankets, gripping my phone like it could protect me. Then silence. No scratching. No whispers. Just stillness. Until something breathed beside my bed. Not panted. Breathed. Long and steady. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. Then I heard the voice. Let me in. I want to show you what I really am. I turned on the lamp. The room was empty. The hallway was empty. But at the bottom of the stairs, just barely visible in the darkness, were paw prints, human-sized, trailing away from my door. I didn't leave my room the next morning. I stayed frozen in bed, staring at the faint line of paw prints that led away from my door, those long, stretched imprints that were not made by any dog I'd ever seen. I waited until sunlight flooded the windows, then cautiously crept out with a flashlight and a baseball bat I hadn't touched since college. Max was gone. Or whatever was pretending to be Max. The front door was closed. All the windows were locked. But still he wasn't anywhere inside the house. Not in the kitchen, not under the bed, not curled up on his favorite spot in the living room. I should have felt relief. I should have packed a bag and left, gone to a friend's, called someone, anyone. But part of me was afraid of what would happen if I brought someone else into this. What if it followed? The house felt different. Like the walls were listening. Every creak of the floorboard made me flinch. I kept the bat with me even while brushing my teeth. That night I didn't sleep. Kept the lights on, every single one. Sat on the edge of my bed, facing the door, like a soldier waiting for war. At 2:17 a.m. I heard it. Thump at the front door. Then claws. Click, 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 dragging across the wood. Then the voice. Open the door. I didn't move. Let me in, Jamie. My heart stopped. Knew my name. I stayed perfectly still. Why are you scared of me? The voice asked. I'm still your Max. I just found a way to be better. Talk to you. To love you the way you deserve. The words felt oily, like something crawling down my spine. And then, the worst part, it started crying. Soft wet sobs. Like Max when he was a puppy. When I'd leave for work and he'd sit by the door whining. The sound was exactly the same. I covered my ears, rocked back and forth, whispering, "This isn't real. This isn't real." But the sobbing didn't stop. Eventually I passed out from exhaustion. When I woke up, it was morning. The house was quiet. I crept downstairs, bat still in hand. The front door was wide open. There was dirt in the hallway. Wet, clumpy soil smeared across the floor. And something else. Claw marks. Carved into the wood like it had tried to stop itself from being dragged back out. But it wasn't Max being taken. It was Max taking something in. Because on the mirror above the fireplace, written in muddy streaks, were the words, "Thank you for letting me in." I spent the next 2 days staying at a motel across town. I didn't tell anyone why. How could I explain that my dog was talking, that it wasn't him anymore, and that something else had taken his body? That I'd heard him crying at the door like a lost child, and then thanking me for letting him in? But the worst part was, I missed him. I missed Max. The real Max. And I was starting to wonder if maybe, just maybe, he was still in there somewhere buried beneath whatever had taken his place. On the 3rd day I went back. Had to know. The house looked the same from the outside. Normal. Peaceful even. But as I stepped inside, I immediately felt the change in the air. Thicker, colder, like the house was holding its breath. There were no signs of Max. No fur on the rug. No chew toys scattered across the floor. It was like he'd never existed. Except for one thing. The back door was open. And in the middle of the yard something was digging. At first I thought it was a man. His frame thin, movements frantic. Then I saw the way his limbs bent. Like they were dislocated. Too long. Too flexible. He was clawing at the dirt, both hands and paws working like a machine. The hole was already deep, 4 feet down and widening fast. I stepped out onto the porch and whispered, "Max!" The figure froze. Then slowly, so slowly, he turned his head toward me. His eyes gleamed yellow in the sun. His mouth stretched open, too wide, too far. "Jamie," he rasped. I found something. Want to see? I shook my head, stepping back. But he was already climbing out of the hole, mud smeared down his front like war paint. He stood on 2 legs now, shoulders heaving with heavy, wet breaths. I buried it, he said, taking a step forward. So deep. But it kept screaming. You heard it, didn't you? At night. In your dreams. I backed into the kitchen, fumbling for the knife drawer. You're not Max, I whispered. He tilted his head again, just like Max used to. No, he said, voice suddenly quiet. Max was weak. He cried when he died. I remembered you. He lunged. I slammed the door and ran, bolting every lock, grabbing my car keys, and tearing out of the driveway. I didn't stop until I was halfway across town. I didn't breathe until I saw people again, saw normal again. But that night, as I lay curled on the motel bed, trying not to think, I heard scratching at the window. And then, softly, right in my ear, though no one was there. I dug up the rest. You should see what's still alive. I didn't sleep after that night. The whisper in my ear, the one no one else heard, clung to me like a shadow. I moved motels. I threw my phone in a dumpster. I even considered calling a priest. But deep down I knew none of it would matter. Because whatever that thing was, it wasn't just pretending to be Max anymore. It was Max. Twisted, stretched, and filled with something far older than any dog could hold. And it wasn't done with me. 3 days later I got a letter. No stamp. No return address. Just a scrap of paper inside that read, "You need to see what's in the hole. Max wants you to understand." I should have ignored it. Thrown it in a fire. But the guilt, it gnawed at me. What if some part of Max was still trapped in there, trying to speak through whatever had taken him? What if this was my last chance to bring him back? Dusk I drove home. The house was dark, dead. The backyard even worse. The hole Max had dug was now massive. A gaping crater carved into the earth, maybe 10 feet wide and far too deep to see the bottom. The air around it buzzed. Not like bees, like voices. Low, murmuring, whispering over one another in a language I didn't know but felt echo inside my ribs. Then I saw him. Sitting by the edge of the pit like a statue. His fur was filthy, slick with mud and something darker. His eyes were no longer gold. They were black. Not inky, not blind, just void. He turned when I stepped into the yard. "I saved the last piece for you," he said. I swallowed. "What piece?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped aside and pointed to the edge of the hole. Curiosity, fear, grief. I don't know which drove me forward. I looked down. Bones. Piles of them. But not animal. Human. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Some still fresh. And just barely visible at the bottom. An old, cracked collar. Max's. The real one. I staggered back. "You buried him." "No," the thing said, standing tall. "You did. You left him to die in the woods that night. Remember?" And then it hit me. The storm. The night Max ran off chasing a deer. I searched for hours. Days. But I gave up. Told myself he'd found a better home. Lied to myself. But Max didn't find a better home. Something else found him. The creature took a step toward me. "You made room for me when you stopped looking." It smiled. "Now make room again." The ground split. Hands, long, rotted, clawed, reached from the hole, grabbing my ankles. I screamed. But I was already being pulled down. The last thing I saw before darkness swallowed me was Max, the thing wearing his skin, sitting patiently at the edge, wagging his tail.